abuse our labor, keep them part-time, working 40 plus a week. No
Peace and solidarity, sisters and brothers, siblings and others,
Peace and solidarity.
dignitaries, officers, friends, and I know there must be some enemies in the audience as well. Let's not kid ourselves. I am so grateful to be here because this is the 91st commemoration of Bloody Thursday, I do believe. And each one, we are losing more and more freedom fighters. Brother Lawrence Tebow. I've learned more about Lawrence Tebow since he's passed away than when he was alive. You're talking about a private brother, a freedom fighter. If anything that you young people, I just want to say one thing. There should be more young people here today. And I'm just so grateful that Steve Zeltzer from the Labor Video Project is here to video and make this video possible for those who are not here today to be seen. You know, when we think about Bloody Thursday, we cannot forget the heroic struggle of working class men and what they had to face. They had to face the state. They had to face, I gotta be careful of this, vigilantes. They had to face members of the Klan, the police on horseback, tear gas. So while we here commemorating the loss of life of Brother Howard Speary and Nick Bordoisi, we cannot lose sight of the lessons that the old timers, the men whose shoulders we stand on. There's been a long line of some bad, you know what's coming out of this organization. A whole lot of them. A whole lot of them. Some are still alive today, and I'm glad to see Brother Jack Heyman and others who have been involved in so many struggles and really exemplifying what it means to have black and white solidarity on the waterfront.
Right.
1934 should have taught us how marine workers and dock workers striking together and Teamsters honoring their picket lines through worker solidarity shut down the West Coast ports. How the workers overcame the employer's ability to use race and nationality and craft to play workers off against each other. I'm gonna repeat it again. How workers overcame the employer's ability to use race, nationality, and craft to play workers off against each other because it was structural racism, which was the hierarchical driving force behind the shape-up. One did not have to be a person of color to be discriminated during the shape-up. That should remind us all that discrimination is not about color alone. That's why having worker control of the hiring hall was absolutely necessary to end this system of making workers beggars for jobs. Let me explain something to you. We talk about discrimination. First thing we think about is blacks, white, people of color. You don't think about things such as ideology, being blacklisted, red-baited because of your politics, what country you come from, having people to say to you, because you come from a Muslim country and you represent progressive ideas, that you should be deported. This is what time we live in there now, sisters and brothers. We should learn that the strikers were involved in a class struggle during the strike. The employers had their own well-financed organizations, major businesses, including manufacturing, retail, transportation, and most importantly, the media, because they had the media baron. We all know who he is, William Randolph Hearst. He was a part of that group. The employers had amassed a war chest of $5 million. They thought the idea of having a worker-controlled hiring hall was part of a Bolshevik agenda. For those of you who don't know what a Bolshevik agenda is, it's talking about the Soviet Union and the communists. Because see, anything that concerns our own freedom, our own well-being, it has to be communist. Longshore workers taught us in order to have rank and file unity, you must first have black and white unity. Please raise your hands if you are familiar with an ILWU member by the name of Lynn Greer. Raise your hands. I figured you would know, Robin. Lynn Greer was an African-American longshoreman who started working on the docks in 1919. There's an article about him written by a guy by the name of Andrew Klein. But this is what you should know about him. We know about Harry Bridges and C.L. Dellums going to the black churches, but we don't know about Lynn Greer going. He was exercising his rank and file democracy by going to the black churches in what I call labor in the pulpit. You know, that's where the ministers speak. And he went and he talked to black congregations and encouraged them not to cross the picket line and to join the union. And it didn't stop there. He was in the Fillmore and other black communities day and night preaching the same thing. He's an unsung hero, like so many, many others who have contributed in making this union great. (1934) should have taught us that white supremacy and racism undermines rank and file unity, working class democracy, and power. I'm going to repeat it again. White supremacy and racism undermines rank and file unity, working class democracy. I'm not talking about bourgeois democracy. We're looking at bourgeois democracy right now, where Democrats and Republicans have the same interest. These are lessons that young people who belong to the ILWU are going to have to use and be prepared to protect their rights and survival as a class. We need our own party. We need a workers' party. The unions have a major role to play in this. Let's not get it twisted. Organized labor is the most organized sector of the working class. They've got money. They've got resources. They've got organizations. The problem is that they're wed to the Democratic Party. And that is going to have to cease. I want to thank you for your attention. And the only thing that I would ask in conclusion is that you join me in saying an injury to one is an injury to all 2 times. An injury to one is an injury to all. An injury to one is an injury to all. Thank you very much.
Follow up on what Brother Dave Gonzalez had to say. and congratulate him on saying it, because we haven't been the best of friends. But the point he's making is we all have to come together now, because we got a big fight ahead of us. It's what Clarence, in his last conversation with Lawrence Thibault, said, the big fight now is against fascism. Thank you, Dave, because what happened then at that caucus was, it was a resolution that I introduced to Local 10. So when it hit the deck at the caucus, it was a Local 10 resolution. And Dave's right. He got up, and when he hit the mic, he said, will all of you who were in the Vietnam War raise your hand? And those people that raised their hand got up and spoke in favor of shutting down all the ports on the West Coast to stop the imperialist wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And although the leadership didn't want to see that happen, it was clear that the overwhelming support was from people who had actually fought, our members who had fought in these imperialist wars. So guess who was the one? Dave, you may not remember this. The person that put that resolution on the deck at the caucus was Lawrence Thibault. Lawrence Thibault did that. And the second speaker to get up and speak in support of that resolution was the guy who just spoke before me, Clarence Thomas. There's something about this story, because every time there's been a militant action on this coast, it's come from right here, Local 10. We're the ones that spark the actions off. And I can recall several of them. One was political prisoner Mumia Abu-Jamal. He was in prison on death row. And in 1999, we shut down every port on the West Coast to free him. And we didn't free him, but we got him off of death row. And unfortunately, he's still on general population, but as he calls it, it's slow death row. So his case was important, because we've been talking about Sperry and Bourdois who got killed, but what wasn't explicitly said is, you can read the mural here. It says, police murder, police murder. They were shot in the back by cops. That's what provoked the general strike. It wasn't they just died. They got shot in the back, and it provoked a tremendous anger. And that's what led to the general strike. And that's why Mumia Abu-Jamal was in prison. We shut down the whole coast when George Floyd was murdered by the Minneapolis police. That came from Local 10. The whole coast was shut down. We had a march from the port in Oakland, 20,000 strong, to City Hall, or what we call Oscar Grant Plaza, to protest the murder of George Floyd. So what I wanted to also mention is that there was an important conference this last week that a number of our delegates from Local 10 went to. The President, Demetrius Williams, Secretary Treasurer Ed Henderson, and Vince Washington. Dave Gonzalez went for 34, and Brother Ed Ferris went for the title officers, along with Bobby Gonzalez, who, by the way, originally was a Local 10 member when he came down to the waterfront. Didn't I say? What did I say? So, anyway, we had an important meeting in the executive board around the question of Charleston longshoremen. there was a big photograph in the New York Times of police attacking black and white longshoremen together. I was sitting down at breakfast with my wife, and I said, wow, this is really important. We need to do something about it. And we had an executive board that evening. I took the photograph down, made a report on what's happening in Charleston, and the local executive board voted to send Lawrence Tebow, who was president of the local then, and me. The Charleston Longshore struggle was made possible because of Lawrence Tebow. And this is how it happened. We went to Charleston. The day before this picket where the police attacked, there was a mass demonstration in the capital of Columbia. It was a demonstration against them flying the Confederate flag from the Capitol. That's the flag of slavery. 50,000 people marched in Columbia against that flag to bring it down. What happened next was interesting, because the longshoremen in the port of Charleston were picketing against a scab company that had taken away their work. It's a right-to-work state. 150 of them. So the same riot police that were brought to the Capitol to control the protesters, 50,000 strong, the next day came to Charleston. 600 riot police against the 150 black and white longshoremen picketing. And they beat the hell out of them. The police forces were helicopters, attack dogs, concussion grenades. I don't want to go through the whole tanks. Lawrence and I saw that. We saw the brutality that the state of South Carolina was imposing on the strikers. Lawrence immediately got on the phone and he called the president and vice president. That was Jim Spinoza and Bob McElrath. And he said, I want to bring the president of the Charleston Longshore Union to the next caucus. And they said, that's internal ILA business. We don't want to get involved in that. He says, no, this is too important. It's too important. I'm bringing him to the caucus. He defied the leadership, and he brought them to the caucus, and overwhelmingly, the caucus voted to support the Charleston Longshoremen. It started right here in Local 10. We took it to the caucus. Kenny spoke to the caucus. We got the caucus on board. That's every port on the West Coast. And then we got the convention on board. Then we went to get the Cal Fed. That's the AFL-CIO for the whole state of California on board. Then we went and got the national AFL-CIO on board. And the problem was, from the very beginning, from the get-go, their own leadership in New York, John Bowers, would not support it. He said it was an illegal strike, and we can't support them. But while he was undermining and blocking any kind of support, the ILWU was going full steam ahead, organizing international support. So right off the bat, we organized out of the Liverpool Dockers struggle, which was defeated, but it was an international struggle. We formed a new organization called the International Dock Workers Council. Brother Ed Ferris represents us on that council. And because the Liverpool Dockers brought together the most militant dock worker unions in the country. And I met the head of the Spanish dock workers. So the Liverpool dock workers said to me, by the way, Jack, this is after their strike was actually defeated. They said, by the way, that scab ship that just got loaded in Charleston is going over to Valencia, Spain. Well, The head of the dock workers union in Spain, La Coordinadora, was Julian Garcia. And I emailed Julian, I said, if you want the ILWU to join the IDC, then you're going to have to show us the difference between the conservative International Transport Workers Federation and the new International Dock Workers Council. And when that ship hit the dock, Julian Garcia went up the gangway and he told the captain, we will not work this ship, which is loaded by scabs. It's unsafe. Unsafe. Within 48 hours, the Charleston longshoremen had a contract with the Nordana Lines. That's what international labor solidarity is about. Lawrence was at the head of that whole movement. If he hadn't insisted on Ken Riley coming to our caucus, this whole thing would never have transpired. That's what Lawrence Thibault was made of. I just want to finish by saying, I think Clarence, in one of his last conversations with Thibault, as I said earlier, Thibault said, we got bigger fish to fry than what's going on right now. He said, fascism is on the agenda. The fact of the matter is, and a number of speakers have spoken to this already, we can't count on the Democrats or the Republicans to represent us. What we need to do is organize, build a workers' party. A workers' party that's going to lead us, mobilize us in actions like shutting down the whole coast against the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, shutting down the coast for George Floyd, shutting down the coast for Mumia Abu-Jamal. Now, with the way ICE is operating in this country like a fascist goon squad, we've got to shut down the coast to stop this kind of fascistic tactics that's happening right now. We have the power to do it. We've got to use that muscle. All power to the working class.